This is One-on-One with Jasper Cole, Hollywood's bad guy, and so much more. Actor, talent manager, producer, and more. Now he's sitting down with today's top newsmakers from entertainment, politics, pop culture, and beyond. This is One-on-One with Jasper Cole.
Wow. It's quite an audience we have there. Howdy, everyone, and welcome to the premiere episode of One-on-One with Jasper Cole. This is your host, Jasper Cole, and I would say coming to you live from Sunset Gower Studios in Hollywood, California, but as fate would have it, being thankfully a working actor, I was called a last minute on a nighttime commercial shoot, so I'm in beautiful Sherman Oaks, California, live on location. And but thanks to the technology and my wonderful producer, Mr. John Williams. Hi, John.
Hey, Jasper. How's it going out there?
Oh, my God, it's hot as hell. But I wanted to say to everyone that we did try to do a Skype. Mm-hmm. We did actually have it set up so that I could actually be seen. And we had it all going, and then it just crashed. So technology has let us down. But I can be here on the phone. The most important thing is, John, you're there in the studio.
I am, and the guys are here with us.
Yes, absolutely. I want to also thank Dominic Friesen, my producer and publicist, and Tony Sweet for this new opportunity. I want to thank all my loyal listeners and viewers from my other show, On the Set with Jasper Cole. Thanks for taking this adventure on this new show with us. Everyone, please follow us on our new Twitter page, One-on-One J. Cole, Facebook, One-on-One with Jasper Cole, and my website, jaspercole.com. So, okay, enough about that. Without further ado, it is with great honor that we welcome our two premier guests, Mr. Paul Katami and Jeff Zarrillo. Hey, guys.
How you doing? Oh, thank you, live audience.
Well, luckily the viewers can see your handsome faces, and thank you guys so much for coming in, and it's been, as you know, a very historical time, especially the last week, and last Friday the Supreme Court, of course, made gay marriage legal in all 50 states, and hooray for that, of course. I'd like to also say happy second anniversary to you guys.
Oh, thank you.
Because we know you had your, I think on the 28th was your 2-year wedding anniversary.
Yes. That is right.
And as probably most people know, and if they don't know, you guys were plaintiffs in the historical Prop 8 case that eventually led to gay marriage in California. So I'd like to say thank you, because my husband and I, Dennis, were able to get married October of last year. So we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
I don't know if enough people thank you guys, because, you know, if it weren't for you and your case, we wouldn't be in California getting married, and at that time we didn't have the Supreme Court making it a federal law. So thank you.
Well, that's very generous of you. We love hearing those stories, because everyone who said, hurry up and wait on this, we said no, because people need to get married, and it definitely benefits their lives, and one day more is one day too long. So we're very happy to hear that, and almost 1-year anniversary. Happy anniversary to you both.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And, it's interesting. That's a great thing I want to jump into. I don't know if you guys experienced this, and now we're going to be hearing it more, that it's legalized in all 50 states. But within our own community, there were times when people would say, well, what's the point of getting married? We have domestic partnerships. We've already gone to attorneys, and we've had all these documents drawn up, and what's the point? And to that, what would you guys say?
Well, just listening to you describe the domestic partnership and the fact that you have legal protections, and we went and did all that stuff. Nobody does that when they're getting married. Nobody celebrates a domestic partnership anniversary. There's none of that. But everybody celebrates a marriage, and with the marriage, with the global term of husband and the global term of wife and the word marriage, everybody knows what that means. They know the level of commitment that couple has shared when they've taken the next step in their relationship by proclaiming their love and commitment to one another in front of their family and their friends. That's what marriage is all about. Domestic partnership just sounds like a legal contract, and that's really what it is. And it relegates you to a level of second-class citizenship of, separate but equal, And
don't forget that a domestic partnership also didn't afford you the federal laws that you were prohibited as well, which are huge, over 1,100 of them that you were still prohibited from. And also, it's not cheap to go out and hire an attorney to make all these, the paperwork in terms of your will and DNRs and all of those things cost. And many people can't afford that. So what you're saying is, domestic partnership, it works if you can afford to go out and get a domestic partnership and then afford to go out and hire an attorney and make sure you're having these protections. Or you could go down to your local courthouse, you can file for a license, you can have a justice marry you, and it could be over. And you're protected equally. And that's critical.
Absolutely, and you're hearing a lot lately, and I actually use this term. And why should we be second-class citizens in terms of why should we have to do these other things like we talked about, paying attorneys and just for example, recently, unbeknownst to me, Dennis and I, just by being married, we had recently sold real estate. We saved a shitload of money.
Oh yeah,
on property gain. You know what I mean? That we would not have gotten as domestic partners. That was just one example. I'm not saying that's why you run out and get married to save money on your property gains tax, but I mean, we've been together 18 years, so at a certain point, we're looking to make it as financially viable as possible also. But that was just an example where I thought, that's wow, if we weren't married, we'd be stuck with that extra $40,000.
Yeah, that would be terrible, and like you said, it's not a reason to go out and get married, but it's an important part of any relationship. It's owning a home is a big step in your relationship or in your marriage, and to be able to take a gain on that, should you sell that and move to a place that's less expensive, you should realize that gain. That's something that we all want to be able to take advantage of it, and filing your taxes jointly as married isn't necessarily a good thing. I mean, you actually get the marriage penalty now that you're gay married.
We found that out as well. That's right. But I think the benefits outweigh the other side.
Sure.
But it's interesting. I'd have to tell you guys. Well, everyone. First of all, we're talking to Paul Katami and Jeff Zarrillo. They also have their own radio show called The Husbands on Sirius XM Out Q 106 Fridays at 2:00. I love the fact that you guys have this great tag of being accidental activists and everyday advocates. That to me is so wonderful, and I wanted to sort of talk about that because now you're hosting a radio show, and whether you sort of probably like the term or not, you are celebrities in the community, be it accidental or not. Right. You guys are making, you're well known, you're doing speaking engagements, and you're out there in the community. Looking back now, back when this all began for you guys, can you believe what's happened to just your personal life in terms of, and then how it's affected you professionally?
Well, it's what's interesting about it is we honestly do, you meet people and they like you did at the start of the show. Like, thank you for what you did, and we just say, listen, we got to merge at a time where it was safer and easier for us to stand up and be part of this. I mean, we're the first ever federal lawsuit, so that was scary. But the fact of the matter is, it was quite accidental. We after Prop 8 passed, we just stood up and said, you know what, enough is enough. Like, we don't want to be treated like this anymore. And we actually did a video response to a commercial from the National Organization for Marriage. We put it up on YouTube. It really became this kind of ripple effect of this idea that we have to fight by using our truth to overcome these misconceptions, these lies and misrepresentations of our community based on these people who are against this. And we used marriage as the vehicle to get there first so that we could make sure that we're protected. So, it's humbling in a lot of ways. It's changed our lives quite a bit. Personally, it gave Jeff and I an opportunity to really talk about marriage. Like, we're like, hey, we're going to fight for this. We're going to have to be married, and what does that mean? So we were able to then define what marriage meant to us, and all that did was really align with the definition of marriage as a whole, not change it, not redefine it. It was we wanted to be a part of that institution. And our everyday lives, we went back to our everyday lives. We really didn't. Every day after a court appearance or a ruling or a media day, we went right back to everyday life because that's what we end up with, even though now we have the benefit of marriage.
And if you see, and if you're on social media, whether you're on Facebook or Twitter, or any of these avenues that people can use to get stories out there, you see this accidental activism happening every day in our community. Whether in all 50 states and around the world, you have people coming out there and sharing a part of their story or something that happened to them within their relationship or even outside of the relationship with their family and their coworkers or their neighbors or their church. These are stories that then ultimately proliferate and they become newsmakers. And that's really what we ultimately did with our story. Was we wanted it was more of a cathartic exercise for us. We were frustrated with Prop 8. We were frustrated with the lies and the misrepresentation that this National Organization for Marriage, which sounds like an incredible organization that everyone would want to be a part of, but it's really this anti-gay organization that has now taken their battle international because they're losing stateside. So we still encourage this accidental activist. We talked about on our show quite often that we need to continue to highlight this, and we need to continue to encourage people to be out there on social media telling these types of stories.
Well, which brings me around to the amazing documentary Case Against 8. Congratulations on being a part of that. That for me was eye-opening, riveting. There was so much in the documentary I think that a lot of people were just dumbfounded by. I mean, in terms of who was funding Prop 8, you know what I mean? There was just so much in that. And did you learn things as well? I mean, even though you were part of the documentary, could you believe the extent that the hatred went towards trying to defeat, you know what I mean, trying to go against gay marriage? I was blown away by it.
What the documentary really helped to expose was what happened at trial. Judge Walker, there was really, many people don't know, this case was never supposed to have a trial. It was supposed to be a series of motions, some appearances by the plaintiffs, and everything would be handled that way. And when Judge Walker started reviewing the briefs filed by both sets of attorneys for and against the Prop 8 initiative, he started to wonder why we weren't having a trial, why we weren't putting on experts and submitting evidence so people could see the true, in our opinion, what was the true animus behind Proposition 8. So by having a trial, it allowed both sides to put up their side of the case. And as soon as the proponents of Proposition 8 got into the courtroom, that's when they struggled to articulate any type of coherent argument. And witnesses that David Boies had deposed ultimately dropped out of the trial. Their one chief witness, whose master's was in Victoria cabinet making, ultimately, after having his testimony questioned by the judge, a year later came out in favor of marriage equality. And their lawyer, Chuck Cooper, said the three most famous words at trial when Judge Walker asked him what harm same-sex couples getting married would have for an opposite-sex couples relationship. He looked at the judge and said, "I don't know."
Wow. Well, let me ask you, I mean, having gone through dealing with the legal aspect of this now, I've been on some legal situations in the last few years too. What is your take now on the legal system in general? I mean, were you astounded at how corrupt it can be, and well, allegedly corrupt? Let me say that. But were you just blown away by? It's really it's almost like a sporting event.
Well, I mean, we understand this, and this is, I think, why we aligned with the strategy and with the team that was putting this lawsuit together. The law is the law; it's black and white, and it should protect everyone. And if you read the Constitution, it applies to all Americans, right? Not just a few, not just some, and not because you're building a fence around a certain group of people because your bias happens to be associated to your faith or belief system. So we fundamentally understood that. So when we first met with our lawyers, and by the way, our lawyers. I mean, talk about erasing the lines of political, making this a political issue. David Boies and Ted Olson coming together, prolific Supreme Court attorneys, and coming together to say, we affirm the Constitution, we affirm the 14th Amendment. This is what it's about.
Right.
Now, for a long time, we had been battling this kind of idea in the public sphere of, what our lives were about. You look across history, and we're just constantly up against the battle of people demonizing us, right? But they're demonizing these ideas either for political gain or whatever it may be. And if you go back to it, you look at it, it really is for gain. It's really not for anything good in terms of humanity. It's political gain or financial gain. It's, whatever it is, it was not legitimate to put a law in effect that would then prohibit people from having the same rights. So we thought the legal system was quite brilliant during this process, because what it did is it took those people who used these lies and misrepresentations, it put them on the witness stand and said, prove it. Give us a legitimate reason why you should prohibit people from having the same right. And like Jeff said, their key lawyer, when asked that question, said, I don't know. The reason was, I don't know. And that was in a federal court of law, full courtroom, gasps all around, because there was the moment for you to define why you were there. So ultimately, the legal process really worked, because during that process, we were able to build an education platform as well. And that platform was able to give everyone an idea of what our stories were, what the human side of this was. And more we saw people coming out and telling their stories and how their lives were damaged by not having the rights associated to marriage. And we were moving the needle not only because we knew the law needed to protect us, but we also moved the needle in the public sphere, in the public court of opinion. And that's, I think, what led us to last week's ruling in the Supreme Court.
Oh, absolutely. And, staying on the topic of California, I used to have people from my home state of Georgia and people around the country would say to me, well, what's wrong with California? I thought you guys were this really liberal state. Why are you having such a hard time passing gay marriage when you have Vermont and you have these other states that you would seemingly think were not, as hip and progressive as California? I think what the documentary shows in a brilliant way, too, is just how all the components that were working against, gay marriage in California. And I think a lot of people don't realize, too, there's a large part of California that is Republican and conservative.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah,
I mean, we were stuck with Schwarzenegger for 2 terms.
Who did veto marriage equality, had the opportunity to sign it into law and decided to veto it, but ultimately decided he would not defend Proposition 8 in court. And I can tell you that, just staying on the topic of the documentary, Paul and I have had so many people come up to us and tell us their stories of coming out, and that after they came out, they played the documentary for their parents. We had an individual come up to us a week or so ago and was telling us about his Mormon cousin who took his own life a few years ago, and wished he hadn't taken his life, and wished he was alive today, so that he could see that not only the progress that we made, but he could have helped use the documentary in his own circumstance. And when you hear things like that, and you realize, and as we have through this whole journey, is that the Paul and Jeff story and the Chris and Sandy story is the story of all gay and lesbian people. And that's why it's so important that we were able to take a stand, because we knew that if we won, thousands upon thousands of couples would also win.
Well, talking about Friday and the history being rewritten and everything I don't know for you, but for all of us, I kept telling my husband Dennis, it always looked good. I mean, it looked like it was going to go our way, but I don't know if I'm just, from being in show business for too long, I'm just always waiting for the other shoe to drop. So where were you guys when you actually heard the decision? And obviously you weren't surprised. I know you were relieved, but was there a part of you that was thinking, this is not a given that it's going to pass?
I'll let Paul answer that, because Paul seems to probably have a very similar personality to you then, with regards to he was always I was always the one that said we're not going to lose. And he was always cautiously optimistic.
I was always cautiously optimistic, because I wanted us to be prepared in either. We didn't know for sure. We always felt good about it, because listen, the other side didn't have a legitimate argument regardless of what they tried to do. We always knew along the way that, okay, listen, that none of this made sense. So, we did the same thing. We listened to the oral arguments at the Supreme Court with these cases. cases in March. And we thought, okay, we didn't lose that one, but you never know. And listen, it could have been a better ruling, right? I mean, we could have gotten equal protection on this, which we didn't get because we still have a lot of work to do. But anyway, we were at home. It was 7 o'clock in the morning, obviously. We had thought about, do we go to Washington? But then they added that Friday the 26th date, and we thought, well, what a poetic day to do it, because Lawrence v. Texas came down on the 26th of June. DOMA was struck down on the 26th of June, and we got the final word from the Supreme Court on that same day. That's the day that we actually walked down those Supreme Court steps to thousands and thousands of people, just knowing that they could now affirm that DOMA was dead and that Prop 8 was dead. And so we thought, okay, maybe the 26th. So we were laying in bed, and Jeff was on SCOTUS blog, and he said, and it was funny because you don't know what to expect. And 7:01, it's like 7:01, it's marriage, and then 7:01 and 30 seconds, we win it 5-4, and so it was an overwhelming moment for us because we had been there, we had been in that room,
right.
We had walked down those steps, we had seen those justices, and so it becomes a visceral response. You just get this response, and honestly, there's a story about the weekend that Jeff and I first got married. We went up to San Francisco for Pride, which was an emotional thing for us because I'm from San Francisco, and we went through the Pride Parade, and we got to City Hall for a party, and a woman came up to us, and she congratulated us, and then she started to cry. And Jeff had asked her at the point, he's like, why are you crying? And she said, well, I'm not from California. I live in a state where I can't have the same rights that you do now here. And it was such a sobering moment because here we are celebrating in the state of California, and we are then very, very distinctly reminded that not everyone similarly situated to us had the same rights. And it created this ugly patchwork of rights that you lose state to state. And so we just doubled down in that moment and said, if there's anything that we could ever do to voice our opinion, to get out there, to embrace this movement fully. And now we have that. We have a triple down now because we need to go back and affirm that there's 29 states where you can be married on Friday and then you could be fired on Monday for being married. So there is so much more work to do, but listen, the celebration has to happen because in celebration there's solidarity. In solidarity there's stories, and in stories people understand, just like this woman told us, people will remind people that they still live in states where this equal protection needs to happen.
A quick little, we were celebrating on Monday with Ted Olson and David Boies and our board, and David spoke to the group, and at one point he said, and these Ted Olson and David Boies' most famous, one of the most famous Supreme Court trials ever in Bush v. Gore. And so David and Ted have always joked about that. It's the one place where they really have a significant disagreement on how the justices should have ruled. But they both have always said that this case is the most important case they've ever worked on. And David grabbed the microphone from Ted and he said, "I think after Friday's ruling, I think I can finally forgive Justice Kennedy for his vote in Bush v. Gore."
But like you said, I mean, this was a 5-4. It's down the party line, and I think that's why I was kind of concerned, because all it would have taken is for one person to vote against it. Right. And again, it's sort of symbolic of what politically is happening in our country as it has been. And I guess a lot of people have said to me recently, the gay community, you guys, you keep conquering all these things. So what's next? And like you were just saying, to be honest with you, I was very shocked to find out how many states that you actually can still be fired for being gay that are still on the books. So like you said, there's a lot of stuff left to be done. But I'm hearing, within the gay community, and I don't know if it's generational. I'd love your take on this, but you'll hear, especially some people, maybe even 60s, 70s, and older, are kind of like going, well, we don't have our separatism anymore. We used to have our neighborhoods, and we used to have our individual bars, and now everything is gentrified, and we're all kind of living as one. And I always thought that was sort of the goal, that we would just all blend together, gays and straights. In West Hollywood, you'd have all together in the Castro. But I do hear this sometimes of like not wanting to lose that sort of separate identity of this is our gay community. And what is your take on that, or do you hear that at all?
We do hear that, and we hear about assimilation, right? We've assimilated now. assimilating by having the same rights doesn't take your identity away.
Right.
I mean, this is a rights issue as well. So the fact of the matter is, what we would say to this millennial generation that says, we don't get it, who cares, why do we even have to fight for this? It doesn't make any sense. And in one sense, it's a very positive way of looking at it, right? They don't understand the negativity around it or the backlash against it. But what we always say is, like, assimilation isn't necessarily a bad thing when you're treated equally, right? And that's what we're fighting for. So you take that person who talks about assimilation, we're losing our identity. No, we're not. I mean, look at the culture. Look at what's happening with transgender awareness. Look at we are growing, and what we're doing is making sure that everyone is represented and treated equally, but that doesn't strip away our character and our identity. We can still be a community, but what we shouldn't do is say that we don't want to assimilate and therefore we don't care. You should meet some of the people whose lives have been completely damaged, and some people who aren't even here because of the bullying, because of the persecution that they come under from state, state discrimination against them, or even the nation's discrimination against them. So ultimately, having the same access to equality doesn't mean that you're assimilating. It just means that you're being treated equally.
And let's not forget too that sure we have won in the courts of justice, and we are winning in the court of public opinion. But just because the law suddenly becomes an ally to us doesn't strip away the discrimination. It doesn't strip away homophobia. It doesn't strip away transphobia. It doesn't strip away bullying. So we still, as much as we talk about assimilation. I mean, you ask people of color if assimilation has happened, and it has happened to some degree. But you look at what has gone on in South Carolina, that discrimination and that hate still exists, and that will continue to exist for a significant amount of time, if not forever, in all different aspects of our culture. So it's important that while we talk about assimilating and we want to assimilate, but we also understand that just because you say the word doesn't make it happen, because the discrimination and the other things still exist.
I'm not any less gay that we're married now, Jeff.
Right.
Sorry.
Well, it's true, and I talk about, when President Obama was elected for his first term, there was all this, I think some people believed, racism's going to be so much better. And of course, what it does a lot of times is it sort of heightens the real racists to sort of bubble up from underneath the ground and surface more. And I think by the second term, we're seeing it more and more. And I say to us gay and lesbian LGBT people, get ready, because I believe, and we just have to be prepared for it. Like you were saying, the homophobia doesn't go away. I think in some ways we need to be prepared that some of the real crazy hatred is going to come our way because we've been given this law now of, legal marriage. But that's okay. We'll take that and we'll fight it. But I think sometimes this kind of freedom brings out the extreme of the prejudice.
I totally agree with that, and I was going to underscore that too with President Obama. Is I have never seen a country so divided over race really since he's been elected. It has been heightened, and it seems to, especially early on in his presidency, seems like he was almost uncomfortable talking about it. And now he's become much more comfortable talking about it. And unfortunately, it's been during opportunities when he's had to be the consoler in chief. And he's, as much as he's done a good job about that, that still exists. And I think that as a community, we need to put our best foot forward to combat that as much as possible.
Right, and I also, I always want to give credit. I always say it's being in Los Angeles and New York, and let's just say Chicago and Miami, Atlanta. The large urban cities. I'm not going to say it's easy to be gay, but let's be honest. I always want to give credit to the couples that are living in 300 population town in Kansas and these rural areas that they've had to, especially the ones that are out and proud and living, their life. I feel like there needs to be more focus on those people as well, and hopefully with this passage of the new law for all 50 states, that more focus will get paid on them as well, because I always think, they're the flyover states. I think that's the real heart of a heartland of America is the cities that are not LA and New York. And so I give them props because I think that's when you really have to be tough and show who you are going out in public in some of these, conservative Republican small towns.
And I think that's where straight allies come into play. Our straight allies, we can't forget about how important they are, whether it be your parents, your coworkers, people in your community, in your church. The straight allies are really, really important, especially in areas where there may or may not be a lot of gay people.
Yeah, and then I wanted to speak briefly, if you don't mind, about this whole issue of religion. How religion has played into gay marriage as well. It often bothers me. I said to someone recently, there are millions of gay people who are religious also. I don't know how the religious right suddenly thought they have a monopoly on religion, and they constantly use the Bible to talk about marriage. Marriage and religion are two different issues. That's it. Just seems to be that the opponents always bring in the Bible. Right. And religion, and it just never seems to stop.
Listen, I come from a very religious household growing up, and I can affirm exactly what you said. What's really sad about it is that they're twisting and cherry-picking an idea that demonizes a group of people based on really nothing, right? They're based, it's really not, and here's the ultimate thing. The Constitution is our shield from the Bible if you don't believe in God's word, right? So the fact of the matter is we live in a country where these protections already exist for these organized religions. And this is why you can have a mosque and you can have a Catholic church and a Baptist church all in the same block if you wanted to, because we have those protections already. The problem I have with this is that they're using this bias, right? This idea of discriminating against a group of people because they say it goes against their faith. You know what? We're not here to combat that in a way to change the way they feel. Feel the way you feel, have your faith. It's absolutely fine, and it's protected under our Constitution. But what we can't do is take that faith-based bias and discrimination, and create a law that damages people's lives about it just because you disagree. So when these, all of these different, organizations and videos are coming out now about, we're just, now we're being persecuted as Christians. I'm, forgive me for being blunt, but shut the F up. I mean, come on, really?
Exactly.
The fact of the matter is that you're not being persecuted against. You already have these rights. You already have access and you already have protection. If you really love thy neighbor and you just, love the sin or hate the sin type of mentality about this, then at least affirm the Constitution and allow yourself to have the discussion or the debate with that person while they're equally protected. Because while they're not equally protected, what you're basically saying is, I have, you have not, and I want to keep it that way. And to us, that does define discrimination and bigotry. That's what it's about, the majority rule over the minority. That's not fair, that's not equal, that's not liberty, that's not what we have in this country. So we got tired of knocking on our neighbors' doors and saying, listen, the Bible's the Bible. Believe what you want to believe. But in this country, the Constitution is the Bible that we all live by. And why do I have to remind you of that?
Well, and that's the whole thing about, look at the all of the 75,000 Republican candidates. I don't know how many there are right now.
76,000.
But, every single one of them keep going back to this thing about every state should have the right to vote. And like you said, a majority cannot rule over a minority. That's what civil rights is about. That's why, and it drives me crazy because I have some really intelligent, friends and family members even that I respect and love, and they're not idiots and they're very bright, and they'll keep going back to that. Well, we should have our right as a state to vote, and they just don't.
And then they use religion, right? And they're using religion, and you say to yourself, it's all of these religious belief, arguments that are coming out now. The right to discriminate based on, your firmly believe, faith belief. And here's the thing about this: you have the right to believe that in your private life. You were seeing this a lot with state employees, especially clerks that are there to issue marriage licenses, saying, I think I just read a story today about someone, I don't know where she was from, but she resigned in Mississippi by not allowing, I don't want to do this. And I was like, listen, the fact of the matter is you take a constitutional oath to uphold the law and live by that if you were a state employee, right? You work for the government. So no one's asking you to stop believing what you believe in your personal life. But if you're going to do your job, what if an atheist were to walk up to you and ask for marriage license? What are you supposed to say? Are you going to ask them if they believe in God? No. But because two men or two women come up to you, you immediately identify and then discriminate against them. I mean, that's discrimination at its best. And I say that because we have to start to expose this and ask those questions.
Let's be honest. Most of the time, the majority voting is always going to beat out the minority, and
right.
if in order for the minority to win, it's going to cost you $40 million and a very heated campaign. But we have to remember is that's why we have the court system there. The courts are there to protect us, to protect the minorities from the tyranny of the majority. And you look at these candidates, these 14 Republican candidates that have said all these things about states' rights and activist judges, and now we're calling them lawyers. We're not calling them judges, which is to me disrespectful. But they're only activist judges when they give you a ruling that you don't like. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure if it would have come the other way and Justice Kennedy's vote would have gone the opposite way, well then they would have said this is settled law now, and good job for the Supreme Court. But no, it doesn't work that way. And we absolutely believe that there should be a democratic process. I believe very much in the ballot initiative process, but especially in California, the ballot initiative process should be reformed. It only costs $200 to file a ballot initiative, and you look at just a few months ago when this idiot in Southern California filed a ballot initiative with the Attorney General's office that was called the Sodomy Suppression Act. And if you were caught, engaging in any type of gay act or gay relationship, you could be shot in the head. And Kamala Harris actually had to take this, our Attorney General, she had to take it seriously. She had to spend her time and the state's money to go to court and have a judge say that this is immoral and obviously unconstitutional on its face. It took some time. He ultimately threw it out. But it just goes to show you that the ballot initiative process, as much as it is appreciated, and it can actually be quite hurtful if it's not, if it doesn't live up to the integrity and the spirit of the law, if you will.
Well, listen, guys, I can't believe the time goes, but I wanted to congratulate you on your radio show and quickly ask you: are you guys loving doing the husbands, and what do you guys have coming up on Friday's show?
Well, it's thanks for asking. In fact, we are now just doing a segment of that show, a half hour a week on Lance Bass's show on Dirty Pop. We just did it was a special series with Sirius XM. We are now hopeful that we'll get our show back in full. But right now we are on Thursdays, usually at 3:30, and we do.
Yes, I listen to you guys on there. Great job.
We do a segment that was really popular. Everyone loved, called "Don't Be Dumb at Dinner," and it's the 5 things you need to know at dinner. So if a dinner conversation strikes up about something in pop culture or in politics or LGBTQ related, that you at least have the cliff notes so you can you can discuss it versus going, this vinaigrette is amazing.
Well, from what I hear, there's a time slot open on 5 in the afternoons now on Sirius, because I think
yes.
Yeah, well, listen, hey, you know what? You've got my vote. Slip you guys in there.
That's very kind. We think that we brought a brand of news to the LGBT community that was kind of beyond the pop culture in some degree, but it also talked a lot about the key things that happened that week within our community, and even now winning marriage. A lot of the stories this week have been about the southern states and the pushback, and I think that's going to be really important that people stay engaged in this fight, because the fight is certainly not over.
It's certainly not over. Listen, we've been talking to Paul, Katami, and Jeff Zarrillo. You guys, thank you so much for being my premier guest here on One-on-One with Jasper Cole. Everyone, check out paulandjeff.com. Case Against AIDS is their documentary. And Twitter, Katami Zarrillo. Guys, thank you. I look forward to actually meeting you in person. And keep up the fight and keep up the good work. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having us. Good luck on that shoot tonight.
Thank you, guys. And everyone, thanks for tuning in. John, thanks so much for your help. And we will see you guys next week, Wednesday, same time, same place. This is One-on-One with Jasper Cole. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for checking out One-on-One with Jasper Cole. Check out past episodes and get the latest as they're released. Subscribe today on iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube.